Welcome back, dear viewers. Yesterday I spoke about corporal punishment and its effect on kids. We discussed conflict resolution or the lack of it. Fact is, life skills are never formally taught to children on any platform. Imbibing these is left to chance. If you happen to grow up in a family that is sorted and in sync with each other, you imbibe life skills from these role models, which work in your favor. But most families are not like that. The parents are often not on the same page when it comes to values or fundamentals or the general approach to life. In such instances, they fail to present a united front to the children. Besides, even if they are in sync with each other, that does not automatically translate to superior conflict management or life skills that they can pass on to their children. Heck, even world leaders all over seem unable to resolve conflicts amicably in a win win manner if the current and past scenarios are anything to go by. Even strategies for little kindergarten children have loopholes. Once, when my son was asked to sit in the thinking chair in kindergarten by his teacher, I later asked him what he had done to warrant that and what he was required to actually think about. And he said he didn't know. So there was no point in putting a kid in a thinking chair where he did not even know what he had done and what he was required to think about. Coming back to my story, one aspect of Eastern upbringing is that of respecting seniority or that of children being submissive to all adults. Initially, I was under the impression that if you were asked a question, you answered it. But later I learned that this was considered rude and was called backanswering, and we were not supposed to do it. I remember when I was still quite new to the school, a few months into first standard, a few of us were taken to the school supervisor, Shenvi sir, because we were late for school, I think. I'm not sure what it was. But what I do remember is that Shenvi sir asked a question, probably why we were late. So I answered. I explained why I was late for school. To this, the sir said something. He spoke quite a bit and I kept nodding anxiously. I was basically an obedient kid. When we got back to class, the teacher asked the monitor how it went. Now, I was very surprised when the monitor said that it was all smooth except for when I, Tiny, back answered and got scolded. I did not even know that I had back answered. I was under the impression that a question had been asked and that it needed answering. After that day, I learned to hold my tongue when being questioned. This led to an awkward situation once. So once a school function was going on and we had a special assembly in the evening. So all the classes went and we sat over there for the assembly. The compeer on the stage called out to different classes that were to come to the stage one by one for their performance or speeches or whatever it was. Now, just a handful of kids from each class were to go on stage for their speeches, not the entire class. But as I sat in the assembly, a little tuned out and absently heard my class name being called out, I just hurriedly got up with my classmates and went to the stage. Once there, I realized my folly and started analyzing my options. I felt like I couldn't just walk away now that my classmates had started their speeches. So, what should I do? Then I wondered whether I should just give an impromptu speech over there, then and there. In the end, I just stood awkwardly on the stage with the others and then walked away with them when they were all done with their speeches. Later, the teacher asked me why I had gone to the stage with the performers when I was not performing that day. I just stared back quietly at the teacher. I had learned not to answer. She asked again and I just stared at her again. Then she just gave up in frustration. In fact, I did not know how to explain my misunderstanding to her, and we just left it at that. Another time, our parents had been invited to the school, to our classroom, to watch a puppet show that we were doing. We had practiced for weeks. Since I was new, my only role in the puppet show, it was like an animal puppet show, my only role was to put the net on the giraffe to show that a hunter had trapped the animal. It was a 10-minute skit. I waited for my mom to arrive. She did not turn up. I guess she got late getting dressed up in a sari, which was not her usual attire. She typically wore the Punjabi suit, which is the salwar kameez. So the parents came, we waited a little bit, then the puppet show was done. So by the time my mom arrived, the puppet show was over. Trying to compensate, the teacher asked me to show my mom the puppets that had actually been placed back into the cupboard. Now another parent was also late, that was Riyaz's dad. So Riyaz took his dad by the hand around the school, he showed him the entire school. Later at home, my mom scolded me for not doing the same. She was like, see, Riyaz's dad was also late and Riyaz took him all around the school and showed him the school. You could have also done that. So I was confused and hurt. Not only had my mom missed my puppet show by coming in late, she also told me I did not do enough for her. Another time in 3rd standard, I was going towards my bus when I saw that the driver had already started the engine. Panicked that he would leave without me, I started running. A teacher stopped me and started asking me why I was running. You tiny, you are running, she said. And dismayed, I watched my bus pull out of parking. I could see, I looked beyond the teacher's shoulder and I saw that. I did not know my way home from school actually. It was about 2 kilometers and I had a vague idea of the way from looking out of the bus window every day, but I had never walked all the way, much less alone. I had not been able to tell the teacher that my bus was leaving and I missed the bus. I did find my way home that day, but I had become this person who would just keep quiet when questioned by adults. Now in high school, this was later, we had library period on Saturdays. It was the first class of the day in that particular year. So the system was that the kid who got to select a book first was rotated according to roll number. So the popular choices of books were Nancy Drew, Hardy Boys, which went first. These were followed by Famous Five, Five Find Outers, the Nancy Drew books Enid Blyton books such as Mallory Tower, St. Clair's, those were then next in popularity. So I excitedly waited for the day when it would be my turn to choose the book first. That tends to be your very special day, right? It doesn't come very often. So usually I got the leftover books, which were none of the above. So when it was my turn to choose first, I excitedly picked up a Nancy Drew that I had never read. That was the first class of the day, right? So then a classmate, Rahul, asked to borrow my book, promising to return it before we left for home. I agreed, not thinking much of it. I had a whole week to read the book and the whole weekend ahead of me. So I gave it to him. Turns out, Rahul was reading the book hidden under his desk during class. A George teacher was the science teacher. She caught him and she confiscated the book. So after science period was over, I went up to George teacher and explained that the book was mine. She refused to give it to me. I had been looking forward to reading this book over the weekend and I did not get to read the book at all. There was nothing I could do about it. Another incident involving George teacher and a book is when I first fell in love with classics, namely Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. Now Mrs. Jai Godrej taught math at our school. She taught Ruby's class. And when Mrs. Jai Godrej travelled abroad, she would bring back suitcases full of books to give her students. Since Ruby was a top performer, really good at math, Jaiben had presented an illustrated copy of Pride and Prejudice to her. The illustrations were beautifully and perfectly done. So I loved this book. I would carry the book around in my school bag and read it sometimes during a boring class. One day, George teacher caught me reading the book in class and confiscated it. Later, when I requested her for the book, she said she had lost it. It was a priceless copy for me. It was not even my book, it was Ruby's book. I have searched for that particular version in vain. I guess it was bought in England and was just available locally, I don't know. So once again, I felt the pangs of injustice. Generally, my mom's strategy for trying to make us street smart as opposed to book smart, of which I was neither, was to tell us how much smarter than us the others were. She had a phrase, "Uddi chidiyan de bhi par gin lende ne," meaning that other people were so swift and so street smart that they could even count the feathers of a flying bird, and like we stood nowhere near that. Her intention, I guess, was to prompt us to be more alert or to be more smart, but it had the opposite effect on me. It made me feel even more stupid and inadequate. Like I could never be that smart or in the league of those street smart people. So, now to another incident. Later, in 5th standard, we had a late joinee, Milind. In the class height-wise queue, I stood about 5th or 6th. This new boy, Milind, was taller than me, but for reasons best known to him, he insisted on standing in front of me in the queue. I asked him to move back, but he wouldn't. I asked the teacher to intervene, but I can't remember what she said. Maybe to sort it among ourselves, I'm not sure. But she did not make him change his place in the queue. I asked again and Milind wouldn't budge. I kept stewing in anger, helpless, like all the while, anytime we were in the assembly, I could only see his big head in front of me. Anytime we were at any function, I could only see Milind's big head. So that used to make me so angry, but I could do nothing about it except stew in my rage. So I was not able to express or channel or resolve such sentiments at all. I did not know how to do that. One aspect in particular where I was not able to assert myself and always felt the injustice was during duty. Now, in our school, the students were responsible for keeping their classrooms clean. We were divided into groups of 4 or 5 depending on the class strength, and the students divided the duties among themselves. So once school was over, class was over, and the bell rang. So the students for the day who were cleaning the class for the day divided the duty among themselves. So there was a system. So they would rotate. The easiest duty was the board duty, where you either just dusted the board with the duster or you wiped it with a wet rag. And then there was the sweeping of each lane of seats. There were about 4 lanes with chairs and tables. And some days they just swept, I guess some days they mopped, but my classmates were sloppy, lazy. Nobody ever mopped our classroom. So ideally this duty was rotated, like each child in that group got board duty on a different day, so that the kid who did the board duty, it was the easiest. You didn't have to sweep, and then you got to go home early, and then there was only one broom. So as the kid who was sweeping first swept, the others were waiting. Then the kid, that one went home, and then the kid who was sweeping second swept, and then the other kid was waiting. So that's how it went. Now, since I was not as swift as the others, my turn to get the broom would often be last, always be last basically. These boys didn't care about the system. So other classes cared about the cleanliness of their classes and even mopped sometimes, but not my class. So this particular year, I was stuck with some obnoxious boys for duty. Now the most coveted duty, like I said, was the board duty. All the kid had to do was wipe or dust the board, and he or she was done. We were supposed to definitely take turns for board duty, rotating it so that each kid got a chance. Then what happened was these boys didn't care. So the day that it would be the turn of my team to do duty, one would pounce on the broom first and just push the dirt to the next row of desks, to the next lane. Then the second kid would grab the broom, push all the dirt into the third row, and so on. So, and one of the boys would pounce on the duster, declare himself as dusting the board, and would just run off after just cleaning the board for a few seconds. So, as each of these kids ran off home, I would be left last to then sweep away all the dirt that they had pushed into my lane from all the rows and to scoop it into the dustbin. In other classes, each person who swept a row collected the dirt from their row, scooped it into the bin themselves. They didn't just push it into the next person's lane. So now one day when it was the turn of my team to do the duty, each of the boys had gotten their turn at board duty and I had patiently waited for it to be my turn. It was my turn for board duty that day, yet one of the boys grabbed the duster, wiped the board and ran away home. I was fuming. I kept telling him it's my turn, but he just didn't care. In a few seconds, he was already gone. This was not fair. And then the other boys did the same thing as usual. Swept all the dirt to the last row for me to sweep and scoop. I felt red hot rage. No teacher to intervene, no reasonable person around. The rowdy boys wouldn't listen to me. So after the last boy had run away in a rage, I was so angry. I picked up the broom and pushed the dirt back into their rows. And then I went home. The next day, when I reached school, the bell was about to ring and the teacher was already in class. Now I noticed that the boys who had come in earlier had picked up the broom and pushed all the kachra, all the dirt back into my row. So they would do that, but they wouldn't pick it up. Like they would just get back at me by doing that, telling the teacher that I had not done my duty the previous evening. So when I walked in, the teacher did not ask me anything. She simply said, "Tiny, sweep the kachra. Go and sweep now." I obeyed submissively because I had grown up learning unquestionable obedience of elders. The beatings had driven home the lesson. And I was innately a cooperative person. But that day, something within me just broke or snapped, or just I was so sad about what had happened, like justice had not been done. The teacher, knowing that I was not the kind of person who would just skip duty, did not try to ask me questions or understand my perspective. She didn't ask me anything. The moment I walked in, she simply humiliated me in front of the whole class, as though I had done something wrong. That day I learned once again to just accept injustice. There was nothing I could do. Like, she didn't even give me a chance. Till date, I experience rage when I think about that day. Instead of those boys being punished for being such a-holes, I ended up getting punished. Patience did not help me in this instance, in the sense that I waited after all their board duty turns were done to get my turn. So I was in fact learning that delayed gratification would not work for me and instant gratification would actually work. There's another instance when patient meant getting a raw deal. We have researchers talking about instant gratification, delayed gratification. In my experience, whenever I have delayed gratification, it has resulted in no gratification. This one time, our parents took us on vacation and bought us a Walkman. Now, a Walkman was something where it was a little box that you could walk with, in which you could insert your cassette player and you had headphones and you could listen to your music. So earlier we had the stereo, which was something you placed in one spot of your house and listened to music. So Walkman was where you could walk with your music. So we were to take turns listening to this Walkman during our vacation when Dad was driving us to Rajasthan. I think each kid got it for 20 minutes or like half an hour. I waited patiently for my turn, which was obviously I was last. I was the last kid to get the Walkman. By the time I got the Walkman, the batteries had given up and the cassette rotated extra slow, warping the sounds. So when I complained about it, of course I got scolded. I sat there stewing, did not even get to listen to music on the new Walkman and got scolded. During that vacation, when we were in Rajasthan, we were excitedly shopping for beautiful Rajasthan style clothes and jewelry. Ruby found a very pretty salwar kameez, but she just wouldn't buy it. I think it was a little like on the pricier side, but mom was willing to buy it. This was the frugality mentality at work that mom had imbibed into us. It was just Molly who never cared about being frugal. So, anyway, I found an outfit that captivated me. I loved the red and orange print combination, the block print combination that was so popular in the 90s. But just as mom was about to pay for it, Ruby commented, "Don't you already have one in this color?" And then mom refused to buy it. We do not come to Rajasthan often. This was an authentic, beautiful piece, and that was a classic color combination. And mom wouldn't buy it because of Ruby's comment. So, what if I had one in that color? It was beautiful. I loved it. I got upset and started crying when mom refused to buy it for me. Then I got a slap. So, not only did I not get the outfit that I wanted, I also got slapped by mom. Such incidents entrenched the learned helplessness in me that would later keep me stuck in a toxic marriage. But that is another story for another day. Till then, take care of yourself, stay safe, stay healthy, and I will catch you next time. Please give a thumbs up if you liked the video and please subscribe if you are not subscribed. Bye for now.